Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney. That's Nick Zararis. And Nick, the Rangers season is officially over. They were eliminated from the playoffs on Saturday. They have a game tonight. They have a game on Thursday to complete the 82, but for all intents and purposes, the season's over. Oh, and on top of everything else, by the way, Calvin DeHaan, rightfully the latest Ranger to voice his frustrations both to Molly Walker and later on Twitter. Things are going really well. I don't know if you can tell.
Well, he was intercepted by the thought police before he could intervene and give his actual thoughts. I mean, that's a perfect encapsulation of everything that is wrong with the Rangers. The Rangers don't actually care that Calvin DeHaan is disgruntled. They care that he was about to spill the beans on being disgruntled. Because the Rangers, as I've really hammered this season, they care more about appearances than actually winning. You know, they want Will Borgen because he's tall and he skates well, not because he's good at hockey. They want Carson Soucy because he's big and he's imposing and not because he's good at hockey. We have to play Matt Rempe every game because he's big and the fans like him as opposed to him being good at hockey. And at a certain point, when people keep harping on intangibles, not even intangibles, that's not immaterial, that's the word I want to use. When they are harping on immaterial ideas and suggestions as to why teams are winning or losing hockey games, you know they're not being taken seriously. You know, when you look at some of the teams that are doing well across the NHL, they are teams that have had identifiable improvements. You think about the Jets year over year, you think about the Stars year over year, you think about Colorado year over year. You know, the Avalanche last year going out as early as they did, they viewed that as a massive disappointment, and they looked around and said, we need to reinvent our team and we don't have enough depth, so we're going to trade a superstar to try and bolster the depth of our lineup. And that's not enough. We're going to go out and we're going to get a Brock Nelson, and we're going to try and find a way to get Gabriel Landeskog back in the lineup. You know, you can change your circumstances very easily in sports. As much as people are going to give Drury, well, how is he supposed to improve the roster so much in one offseason? It only takes one offseason to change up the vibes entirely. And
Saw it in Washington. The Caps went from being the worst team in NHL history to make the playoffs with like a minus quadrillion goal differential, getting swept and not really knowing what the next steps were. Now they've won the division. Like they're after one off season, like they because they made the right decisions. They made the right roster changes. Spencer Carberry is a really good coach. Everything is working for them. They're gelling, and look at where they are. One offseason can determine a lot. And also, we know we talked about this before. At the deadline, Drury was busy. He made a lot of moves, but they didn't amount to much.
Nope.
All of the trades that he made were trades that he, you know, I don't want to say like, made just to look busy, but he was, active, but they didn't change anything. The whole point of making trades is to change things. That's why you make the trade. Drury made a whole lot of them, and it changed nothing. So, how does that, like, how is that supposed to instill confidence in the organization and the general manager and from the fans that, okay, this team can now make more necessary changes after Thursday? How do we look at this and go, okay, well, Drury made all of these trades, and the defense got worse despite making all of those changes. The defense got even worse than it was, and now we're supposed to look around, give him another full offseason with another head coach, and see how it goes from there. Like, I don't see how this instills confidence in anybody.
And our general manager, as he's known to do, is nowhere to be found. He can't be he can't be seen in public. He can't ever answer any questions, and people will give him, well, the Leon Rose doesn't talk to anyone. Well, the Knicks actually win basketball games. You can get away with doing the MIA and you can do hiding in plain sight when you're good at your job.
Apropos of nothing, after the Flyers game, I saw Danny Briere.
Yeah.
Like, Danny Briere and Keith Jones were in one of the boxes, and after the game, we were all in the elevator together. Like, I saw him. I don't know where Chris. I mean, I'm sure Chris Russo were at the game, but I didn't see him. I did see Danny Briere and Keith Jones though.
And that's one of those things. And people love to give the cop outs. Well, it's James Dolan's team. It's James Dolan's team. Well, yes, it is James Dolan's team, but as we have seen as over the course of the last 15 to 20 years, if James Dolan likes you, he'll give you a million chances to hang yourself. You know, Glenn Sather got to run the show for 15 years, and it took them going to like the bottom of the barrel for 4 straight years for Sather to be like, hey, maybe I don't know what I'm doing as much as I thought I did, and taking a little bit of a step back and kind of retooling the team and trying to get younger and trying to build a team as opposed to just signing every free agent imaginable. You look at the loyalty James Dolan had to Isaiah Thomas, who was an abysmal coach and a terrible executive, and still was like, yeah, you can run the Liberty. Why not? As just because people like James Dolan, people like George Steinbrenner, for whatever reason, if you're loyal to them, and we're watching this play out in real time right now, the fact we are sitting here a season where the Rangers entered the season as like the fifth or sixth best odds to win the Stanley Cup, and they are going to entirely miss the playoffs. And the conversation is, well, they'll get a new coach as opposed to, yeah, the general manager needs to go, tells you where the organization is at. Because if there was actual chatter as far as Drury being out, that would be everywhere. There would be conjecture about that. There would be a slow burn of this over time. And instead, it's, well, he just needs more time to retool the roster. He's had 4 off seasons at this point. He's had 3 full drafts. He has put one guy he has drafted into the NHL in that time period. Well, 2 now because Perreault got in. But at a certain point,
did he get in? Because he's been scratched the whole goddamn time.
he played, what, 8 minutes, 9 minutes the one game, and that was really it. But they'll get in tonight. But again, that's kind of the point. And I always go back to this whenever we do these eulogies, these season-ending episodes. And it was a class I took in college on the American Civil War. And the most important thing I took away from that class is how to think about big picture incidents or problems. And because they don't happen overnight. The Rangers aren't where they are right now because of just what happened this season. There are things that happened last year and the year before that and the year before that. And you could make an argument that go back, a decade. You can make an argument that decisions that were made a decade ago are still impacting the team to this day. I was talking about it with someone over the weekend that the Rangers spent all of that time and effort retooling, rebuilding a team, and they have stunningly little to show for it. Fox, yes. Shesterkin, that doesn't count. He was drafted well before the rebuild comes. You sign Panarin and
Fox, again, we have to remind ourselves Fox is a New York Ranger because he was a fan.
Yeah.
He forced his way here.
Yeah.
It's not like the Rangers found him and was a diamond in the rough find and they developed him. No, everybody knew he was going to be good, and then he was like, I want to play nowhere except for the Rangers. Like, that's how we got Adam Fox. That's how we have Adam Fox in New York City. That's it. Adam Fox's dad is a Rangers fan. Adam Fox was a Rangers fan, so he wanted to play here. That's how that happened. Like, that is an important piece of all of this. Continue, sorry.
And part of this problem the Rangers are having right now, and I want to draw a comparison to the situation in Dallas, where they were a decent team last decade. That Jamie Benn, John Klingberg, Tyler Seguin group with Ben Bishop, they weren't bad. They went to a cup final, but Jim Nill looked around and said, these guys are getting older. I need to find a way to prolong their careers. And they reoriented the core of that team around Miro Heiskanen, around Rope Hinch, Jason Robertson, and they have continued to augment that group. They ended up going out and getting Mikko Rantanen and trading Logan Stankoven for him, amongst other things. And that was supposed to be the outcome here for the Rangers. They were supposed to use Panarin, Trouba, those guys they signed who were in their mid to late 20s, guys like Ryan Strome, Zibanejad, Kreider, etc. Use those guys to bridge the team till, Kakko, Lafreniere, K'Andre Miller, Nils Lundqvist, Braden Schneider, until those guys were ready to make the team theirs. And then over time, you start to ease back the Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin minutes to where you're at now, where I know Seguin and Ben have been hurt largely this season, but if you look at them last year, where it was largely them and Jamie Benn as the Matt Duchene as the third line last year, that was supposed to be how this was going to work. They went out and said, well, we're going to sign Panarin and we're going to trade for Trouba because we don't want these guys to be getting their teeth kicked in the first 2 or 3 years as pros. But this is going to be their team eventually. And now we're sitting here, and this is apparently JT Miller and Vincent Trocheck's team. After 4 years in a rebuild, missing the playoffs, picking 1st, 2nd, 9th, 7th, 21st, 17th, 29th in a 4-year window. The Rangers never made that transition. They never empowered those young guys to feel like this was their team until it was already too late. We went into last year and they were like, well, they really need one of Kako or Lafreniere to pop off. And very luckily, Lafreniere was able to do that last year. And then this year, they really needed Lafreniere, Hedel, Kako, and you could say Keandre Miller, Braden Schneider to take big steps. They waited too long to put those guys in a position to be like, hey, this is your team. And now everybody's got discontent. I mean, Calvin DeHaan's been here like a month and a half, and he's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? This isn't how do you run a professional hockey team. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like amateur hour right now where no one knows what they're doing. The coach sounds like a jackass every time he opens his mouth now. Like, this is end stage Alain Vigneault levels of delusion, or he's just outright stupid. One of the two, neither of which is good. The general manager is nowhere to be found, and the team stinks. Like, there's nothing redeemable about this.
Yeah, and it really highlights a big problem when we've had, like, the Rangers have had a lot of player discontent lately, especially, but it's a real big problem when a veteran like Calvin DeHaan, who you traded for, by the way. You traded for this guy. I understand that it might have been a contract thing, and he might have not been your first choice. And by the way, in the games that he played here, he was objectively good, objectively better than Vakanainen, than Borgen, than Susie. He's been better than like 80% of the defensemen that you've put out there on the ice. So, like, for him to come out and essentially like add fuel to the fire and be like, yeah, like, this is a disaster. He didn't say that, but like, that's the TLDR of what he said. That is alarming, to say the least. It's really not something that should happen ever, for sure, but it's something that just really highlights how dire the situation currently is. You cannot trade for a player, have him sit for 18 straight games, and have him watch the blue line be as miserable as it has been, and not even give him a shot to fix it. Like, I understand Calvin DeHaan is not a top 2 defenseman. He's probably not even a top 4 defenseman. But are you telling me that Calvin DeHaan is going to be worse than Vakanainen? Are you telling me that he's going to be worse than Carson Souza? The answer is no. Like, I understand that, in 2 of the 3 games that he played Nashville and the Islanders. Like, I understand that. And the numbers may be a little bit more propped up than maybe what his average should be or what they could have been like here. I get that. But you're sitting here and telling me with a straight face that he was going to be worse than some of the guys that have been actively awful on the blue line this season? I just don't buy that. So again, the question is, like, you traded, for Urho Vakanainen as essentially a throw-in. Like, Vakanainen was not the guy that you traded for in the Trouba trade. The Ducks took on his full salary somehow, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll give you Vakanainen just to make some money work and to get some money out of the contract." Like, okay.
And the Rangers needed a body.
They needed a body, but why does he continue? Like, he's showing you he's a step slow to things. He doesn't know how to do. He doesn't know what to do with the puck, and his defensive IQ is not where you want a top 6 defenseman to be. So why the insistence of continuing to play him over someone like Calvin DeHaan, who,
or
again,
Zach Jones.
Zach Jones, of course, but even if Calvin DeHaan was going to be bad for the next couple of games or whatever it is, you don't know that because you didn't play him. The insistence of playing bad players over somebody, it's like the old joke of like, oh, well, why play young players that might be bad when you could play old players that are bad? It's like the situation is a little bit different because Calvin DeHaan, I think, is 33 years old. But like the fact of the matter is that you don't know whether Calvin DeHaan is good or bad in your system because you don't play him. But you know that Urho Vakanainen is bad in your system, but you play him anyway. That doesn't make any sense to me.
The Rangers for a long time have really loved third pair defensemen. You could make an argument they have like as many as 6 third pair defensemen on this team right now. And that's not a bad problem to have per se. But when you think about it like this, and I was looking at this earlier and I wanted to bring this up. one of the big changes year over year this year versus last year is just the minutes allocation, the responsibilities. Last year, Braden Schneider played the sixth most minutes of any defenseman on the team. This year, he played the third most minutes of anyone on the team. I feel pretty confident in saying nothing about the previous 4 years of the Braden Schneider experience told me he was a top four defenseman. It was always hypothetical. It was always suppositional. And I'll be fair, a lot of my optimism for Keandre Miller's career trajectory was largely rooted in projection and seeing the traits and hoping that would translate to
Because he shows you
actual,
flashes.
yeah, it would translate to material improvement, would translate to actual results at some point. Nothing about Braden Schneider's NHL career so far has ever said, oh, yeah, this is a guy. His puck skills, 4 years in now, are basically what they've always been. He's not great with the puck in his own end. And I said this 2, 3 weeks ago, and I am seeing people say this, so I know I am not crazy. How is the team supposed to get better when you've locked up 5 of the 6 defensemen who are on this team right now to come back next year? How is there supposed to be material improvement when you're locked into so many of the pieces in this lineup, you know? And yes, can you get rid of guys? Sure. Are you going to though? But by all accounts, and this has been a Rangers issue forever, they don't move on from guys until they've absolutely established there's nothing there. You know, we did 3 years of Brett Howden getting cardio. We did 3 years of Libor Hayek somehow getting ice time, even though every time he went out there, he looked like he'd never played organized hockey before. And the problem and the thing that's so frustrating about it, especially
The
if you
core
want,
piece, by the way, in the McDonough Miller trade to Tampa Bay.
if you want to talk about why this is frustrating, look at the career Brett Howden's having in Vegas right now. He's nothing special, but Vegas has turned him into a functional NHL hockey player in a way he never would have as a Ranger. Look, Kakko's not lighting it up in Seattle, but he's a functional NHL player. He's got one of the best goal splits of anyone on the Rangers this year, even though he hasn't been on the team since like December. The Rangers, I really feel like, don't understand certain parts of the team building, the art of team building. You know, there's the scene in Moneyball where Jonah Hill says they just get players. They're not thinking about winning. They just try and get as many good players as they can, and they say they'll figure it out. And that's largely been the Chris Drury way here. It's, yeah, we'll get Trocheck in here. We'll figure it out, even though he's never really been a second line center on a good team. If he plays with Panarin, he'll be fine. Well, we can get this guy in here, and we can get Patrick Kane, and we can get Tarasenko. And how are they going to fit? Well, we'll figure it out. They're good. We're going to figure it out. They're good players. We know what good players are. And now you're sitting here. You have burned an ungodly amount of capital over the last 3 years. All of your core pieces are 3 years older. You're going to need a new coach. You have no miracle savior prospect on the way. Like, even if you think Perreault or Othman are going to be pretty good, that's at least a year or two away. And at that point, you need a Panarin replacement. At that point, Fox will be 29, 30 years old. Shesterkin will be 29, 30 years old. And you have failed to find that next wave of guys. Could they? Sure. Where are you going to play them? Where in the lineup are you playing that next wave of guys? I mean, they already have too many guys to get in because they want to play crappier players over them. You know, why did they bother putting Parssinen in? Is he even going to be on the team next year?
No.
Like, he's going to get non-tendered and sign somewhere else where he can actually play consistently. Because if at any point in the last month and a half, if the Rangers really thought Parssinen was going to be a useful piece, he would have been playing at some point in the last month and a half. And instead, the coach spits at all of us, gives us the middle finger, and says, you want to see Perreault and Othman? Get lost. You're watching Parssinen. Nothing about anything of the last month has made sense. And nobody gets to do Laviolette's the coach. If Chris Drury wants guys in the lineup, he can get guys in the lineup. That's how this works. I'm so tired of the excuses being made for the general manager as far as the lineup and the decisions. Every day that Chris Drury allows those lineup decisions to be made, he is at the very least giving his implicit support to those decisions. Because if he didn't, there would be an intervention. There would be hey, no, this guy needs to be in the lineup. But alas, here we are.
I just continue to not understand the thought process. And again, like, I would love for Drury to explain this or Laviolette to explain this. I'm not going to be in the locker room, so I can't ask this in the next couple of games. What was the point of signing Gabriel Perreault and burning the first year?
Well, he wanted to sign to burn the clock. That's why. The
like
player wants to sign as soon as possible so they can get that first year off,
I
so they can get to real money
sure
faster.
I understand that, but from the Rangers'
Because he
perspective,
goes back to college in the fall if you don't.
right? But if you're gonna like, you might like you the season's lost. And also to further highlight this, his teammate Ryan Leonard got like top 6 minutes in Washington, and by the way, that team won the division. Like I know the situations aren't 1-to-1. I understand, like, there's nuances, and there's I'm not it's not a direct comparison, but Perot's teammate is on a playoff team, a potential cup contender team, and they signed him, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you could play with Strome or Ovechkin or whoever, and Tom Wilson or whoever." Yeah, we'll see. Let's see what you got. They gave him confidence, and yeah, I mean, he scored the funny empty netter because Ovechkin didn't want to go on the ice. Like, it was like, it's like, this is good. You build his confidence. And now, I think he got hurt, and I forget if he got back or not. But, like, in the little bit of ice time that he's had, you can see the talent. You can see the kind of, okay, Ryan Leonard is gonna be an active participant in this team moving forward. And also, I saw that with Gabriel Perreault too in the 6 seconds of ice time that he got so far. Like, you could see his speed is there. He's got a knack for finding open players. Like, he's definitely well, as far as I can tell so far, and again, the very limited sample size that we have, could and should probably be a solid NHL player. The problem is that the sample size is so small because he doesn't play. Why? Why play Parson over him? Like, why play Rempe, Carrick? Like, these guys that they're not long-term prospects for this team. Like, Sam Carrick won't be here in 5 years. With any luck, Gabriel Perreault turns into a solid player and is still here in 5 years. So why prioritize? It's like Colin Blackwell playing over Lafreniere again. Why? Why are we repeating the same process, hoping for a different result? Why is Colin Blackwell playing in front of Alexis Lafreniere? Why is Juuso Parssinen playing in front of Gabriel Perreault? I don't know the answer to that. And this is a question that has spanned the dawn of time with this organization. Like, why? Why do middling players with no long-term prospects in this team continue to get ice time and roster space over young, promising players that sit in the press box to learn? Learn what? That this team can't defend?
Oh,
It
that
can't
was
score?
the most, again, what I said before about like the most asinine thing you've ever heard. Pete, you're not going to be here next year. Whatever your coaches are telling Gabriel Perreault and Brennan Othman, I hate to tell you, it doesn't matter a whole lot. And look, someone's head has to roll for this, and Drury's not going to fire himself. So, as much as like I don't think Laviolette was like, the biggest driver for the season unraveling the way it did, he was definitely a party to it. And it is entirely untenable to try and sell the fan base that you're bringing him back. I don't think there is a world where you can get away with doing that.
And again, like, if there's like a hidden reason behind all of this, like if there's like this underlying current that has driven a lot of these problems, well, either be more transparent about it, or don't pretend that these things aren't happening.
Yes.
Those are your two avenues. There can't be this third, like, everything is fine, don't worry about it kind of attitude. There can't be. Either you come out and be honest with the fans, the media, everybody involved. Hey, X, Y, and Z happened, which led to A, B, and C, and that derailed the season and this and that. Like, you really open up, which is not going to happen. Like, there's not this third option where, you just try to sweep everything under the rug and pretend everything is fine. That option does not exist. There's too much heat. There's too much pressure from not just the fans and from the media, from your players. Kakko, Zach Jones, Jimmy Vesey, who are not here anymore, Calvin DeHaan. Like, this is not a single problem. This is I've never heard of this many players in the same season being so adamantly vocal about what's going on in the organization. Like, I've never seen this before. Like, you cannot pretend this doesn't exist. Like, this is a massive problem that they are going to have to confront at some point, because like, it's really funny because when they waived Barclay Goodrow, the argument from talking heads around the league was, "Oh, how are the Rangers ever going to sign players when they trade Barclay Goodrow this way?" Well, ironically, they're going to have problems signing players, not because of Goodrow, but because of everything else.
I tweeted this last week in the middle of the week when the conversation started to get loud around Laviolette, and I think it's really ironic. Like, it's almost like Twilight Zone that Chris Drury spent so much of his first offseason acquiring culture guys who had no material impact in terms of being good at hockey. And he realized after 3 years, hey, these guys all kind of suck. I need to make the team better. And in emphasizing culture and effort and intangibles and all of the immaterial, non-tangible aspects of the game, he learned himself a valuable lesson that culture and effort and intensity, those are useful when you're dealing with two teams that are evenly matched. If you play two teams that are comparable in talent, yeah, you're going to take the team with intangibles, with effort, with leadership, with experience. But you need to have enough talent for that to matter. And very clearly, and I've been pounding this drum for years now, the Rangers don't have a culture. They don't. You could say, oh, they were so resilient last year. Yeah, sure. They were also a good team last year. I think a lot of people are guilty of it. And we talk about this a lot when it comes to who a team names as a captain. Like, do you need it to be the best player on the team? No, not necessarily. I think if you're one of the best players on the team and you can kind of command the room, that's a little bit different. And I think, frankly, that's more important. But at a baseline level, you do need to eventually be able to go out there and make the play. You do need to be able to go out there and play some hockey. And you sit here and you think about this now. Chris Drury came in as the beneficiary of a bloody coup. He had rejected, I think it was the Panthers and the Sabres, the Panthers and the Penguins jobs as general manager. When he was the AGM here, he had interviewed with two other teams and said, no, I'm going to wait. And very clearly, he had an inside line on being able to get to the big seat. And whatever you think, all of these issues start there. And I know Jeff Gorton giggles to himself every day now that
the Montreal's in the playoffs and the Rangers are in a tire fire and out of it. Oh yeah, he's having a great time.
And Montreal has like just so much more upward trajectory to go. Like, these are the early stages of that. And yeah, could I understand the Rangers getting a little impatient and like, hey, we need some results. They were 1 year into like actually playing a lot of the guys they had drafted at that point. Like Lindgren's first full season, Lafreniere's rookie season, Miller's rookie season, Kakko's third full year. Like, you needed to give these guys runway and leeway. And instead it was Colin Blackwell and Jack Johnson and Anthony Bitetto and just the dregs of the earth filling out the bottom half of the roster. And you're sitting here with the repercussions of that now. Because you didn't put the work in 3 and 4 years ago, you got rid of all of the guys who were supposed to be changing the impact of your team. You were supposed to hand this team over to Miller and Schneider and Lafreniere and Kakko and Chytil. And now it's JT Miller's team. And I don't know if you know this or not, Andrew, but a lot of the issues the Canucks have had over the last 3 years are tied to JT Miller. And whether or not how much you want to put the blame for him on that, you can. And again, this is very similar to what we've said with the Rangers, where because of the lack of transparency and you don't know what happened, all you can do is try and read between the lines and fill in the blanks. And I know people have goldfish memories now. Does anyone remember the column Vince wrote back in December about how Chris Drury is like a paranoid lunatic and firing people because he thinks they're disloyal? Like, these are all recurring themes. You know why you don't tell anyone what you think about them the way Chris Drury very clearly has with Calvin DeHaan? Because you can't tell them face to face, hey, I don't think I can get you in the lineup. And that's one of the signs of weak leadership. If you can't be honest with your people, you can't tell them what you think, and you just allow things to fester, you don't take accountability the way Chris Drury hasn't, you end up with where you're at now, where the Rangers are just a black hole. Yeah, they have talent. It doesn't matter a whole lot if the talent is miserable. And yes, and I was saying this to you before we started recording, and I'll throw it to you on this note. I think the players are the most culpable in this season going off the rails the way it has, ultimately. There was enough talent here to not have a death spiral the way they did back in December, but they did. And that is an indictment on them not being able to get a handle on it, seize the reins. But at the same time, I do understand, like, if the GM doesn't give a shit, why should I give a shit? And we always say that leadership in sports trickles down. It's the one area of the world where trickle down economics actually works, is leadership in sports. And that's kind of what you're seeing now. The GM is unaccountable. So why should the players feel accountable? If the GM doesn't get held accountable, why are they going to be held accountable?
Just everything. It doesn't feel. This is gonna sound ridiculous because but like this doesn't feel like a team.
No.
The step one of being a professional athlete is being on a team. And on paper, the Rangers are a team. But in practice, they don't feel that way.
Nope.
Like you're walking on pins and needles. Everybody's really tense. Everybody, like, there's no one's loose. It's all very rigid, very structured, very, like, if there's one thing that goes against or, slightly it's like studying word for word, but you get to the test and like the question's worded a little bit differently and now you have no idea how to answer it. Like that's what this feels like. And that is one of the biggest problems right now for this team. You look around the rest of the league, right? Like, again, I referenced Washington a little bit ago. That feels like a locker room that cares for each other. They have management that cares, a coaching staff that cares. Everybody's in unison. They're all, having, like, I don't want to say like dinners are the biggest, like, highlight of being a team or whatever, but like it just feels like they are a more together group. Whereas this locker room does not feel that way at all. Everyone's like afraid of everything. And that's not how to run a professional sports team. Like, you need, as much as we like to not bring up vibes, like you do need good vibes in the locker room. Like, you need people to like each other, or at least for the most part, sometimes to generate success on the ice. And not only is that not happening, I mean, like, it feels like everybody is out for themselves sometimes, as opposed to, hey, by the way, like, you're part of you're on a team with 18 skaters, 2 goalies, a coaching staff, play for each other. And the Rangers not only have not done that at all this season. You talk to the players and it's a very, like, it's they won't say it, but it just feels very not like, I'm blanking on the word right now, but it just feels like they're all playing individually. And it's gonna be game 81 tonight, and it's still on the ice looks like they haven't had a practice. And like that's one of the big, like, that's one of the biggest issues I can possibly think of when it comes to this team, is like, it's April and they look like it's September. How is that humanly possible? How is a professional sports team that allegedly practices, most of the time, go out there and play games like they don't know where anybody else is on the ice at all times? How does that even happen? Like, I can't even wrap my head around that. I'm not in the practices, like, so I can't see what they're doing. I'm not there. But it's so strange to me how you watch them play and it genuinely looks like they've never played with anybody else on that roster. It's game 81. How? I can't understand that.
They've been mentally checked out for like 2 months now. That's the quick answer. Is they've been thinking about Cancun for the last month and a half. And everybody can say what they want about, well, we tried so hard, or all we need is a better effort. The team stinks. We've been saying for a month now, stop talking about effort. It's April. If you can't get up for these games that are playoff games, you're just bad. And I think that's really my big takeaway from this season. It's always been, whenever we do these autopsies, for the most part, the general consensus is, they got outplayed. The other team was better. That's fine. And we don't ever build on that. We don't ever expand on that. Like, did I think the Panthers were a better team, more talented last year? Yeah, they were. Was Tampa Bay better 2 years ago? Were the Devils, Tampa Bay 3 years ago, Devils 2 years ago? Yeah, those teams were better. They were more talented. They were better, period. That's the end of the conversation. Then how come we didn't try and get better? If we're saying, hey, we needed a better effort and we weren't good enough, how come our biggest material changes to the roster were the sixth defenseman and a top 9 winger? If we know we need to close the gap, why are we relying on effort? Why are we relying on Trocheck sustaining career bests at 32 years old, playing alongside Panarin and Lafreniere? And at a certain point, it just becomes infuriating because if you're going to sit here and tell me, well, the general manager thinks they're good enough, they just haven't worked hard enough, they haven't gotten lucky, well, then you're not doing enough as a general manager. If you're saying, well, we didn't work hard enough, go ahead.
No, I was like, if we were talking about effort in April, then the general manager's job is to get rid of players that don't have effort in April. Like, it's kind of as simple as that. Like,
exactly, you're the GM. If you don't like the effort, tell the coach, nah, scratch him, sit him. At no point this year did they symbolically scratch Zibanejad, Kreider, Trocheck.
They did Kreider once.
Yeah, they did Kreider once, but it was
this whole big deal, by the way, that fixed nothing.
No,
Kreider, by the way, Nick, I don't know if you noticed, he had 5 assists, 5 all year. And I understand that like his game was never big, like is never a pass heavy player. 5 assists. I think he had 1 primary assist.
I think he has 1, if I remember correctly. Like if
you're Chris Kreider, dude, it's like, what do you mean you have 1 primary assist in the entire season? Like this was like October. Like, okay, well, what he's gonna, like it's the middle of April. You have 5 total assists, like not on purpose. You know how difficult it is to be a top 6 / top 9 winger in the NHL and have 5 total assists in the and play 80 games. Like, it's very difficult. Even like you get assists by accident. Like that's really, and I love Chris Kreider. I think he's done a lot of great things for this organization. The Rangers not trading Chris Kreider when he had a little bit of value left I can't explain that. And yeah, you don't trade him, and he continues to not do much of anything. Well, he's still here, so yay! It's just there's a lot of questionable decisions that have continued to be made by the coaching staff, the managerial staff, and I just don't see how things shift in a meaningful way without meaningful change to facilitate those moves. I can't see it, especially now with the sample size that we have from Laviolette, from Drury, from everybody involved. I don't see them waking up one morning and be like, oh yeah, like everybody's right, I should be doing this instead. I don't see how that happens out of thin air.
So one thing I wanted to talk about real quick, and I said something along the lines after they lost the other day that this is Drury's mess. He probably shouldn't be given another chance to clean it up. And I had someone reply to me and say, well, this was Jeff Gorton and JD's mess, and Chris Drury cleaned it up. I don't understand how you could possibly think that Chris Drury inherited a bad situation. If you go and look, and I went and did this morning, the roster after that 56-game season in 2021, the Rangers had 13 skaters on entry-level contracts, and they were $11 million under the cap that season. Now, if you were to do that math, they were $20 million under where we're at right now in terms of the salary cap. Chris Drury was handed $20 million of cap space and a top 5 prospect pool in the entire NHL, and extended Mika Zibanejad, extended Adam Fox, extended Igor Shesterkin, swapped out Strome for Trocheck, and that was all of his liquidity. And then, don't forget, he traded Pavel Buchnevich for a second-round pick and Sammy Blais because we needed to get tougher because Russians aren't tough, apparently. And because of that, they have spent how many second-round picks trying to get a right winger to play with Zibanejad and Kreider since then? You know what's funny? I remember being gaslit to my face by everybody and their mother that, well, they couldn't afford to keep Buchnevich. They paid more for Barclay Goodrow, Ryan Reeves, and Patrick Nemeth than the Blues have paid Pavel Buchnevich. Buchnevich is getting $5.8 million. If you add up those 3 guys and Sammy Blais, the total cap hit was over $9 million. People want to believe what they want to believe. And at this point, the general manager has shown you he does not know what makes a good NHL defenseman. He doesn't. They got lucky on Erik Gustafsson last year. That worked out for them. They have had Zach Jones in the organization for 4 years now. Zach Jones was on that team. He got games in 2021. It is 2025, and they still don't know if Zach Jones is good at hockey or not because they refuse to play him. At any point in the last 4 years, instead of Harper, instead of Mikkola, instead of Patrick Nemeth, they could have went with Zach Jones. They could have went with Nils Lundqvist instead of Braden Schneider. But no, they made a decision after 20 games of Nils Lundqvist. Nope, Schneider's better. We want Schneider. And that was it because they had the predetermined outcome they wanted. They just made it. They didn't do the work. They didn't evaluate these guys. They didn't get actionable information. They went on hunches and suppositions. And that's why we are where we are right now. There's talent here. There is a path out of this abyss, organizing the team around Fox, Shesterkin, Cooley, and the young parts of this team. The problem is, all of those young pieces are extremely unproven. The team's proven pieces are old and expensive and going to be difficult to move. There is a path to making this team better. It's probably 2 or 3 years from now, and it's with Will Cooley as the team's most documented player to this point. Then
I'd give honestly, I'd give Will Cooley the captaincy. Genuinely, like after the Flyers game, like I spent a couple of minutes with Will Cooley in the locker room, and he was like he was fighting back tears. He was talking to Colin because it was Colin Stevenson, it was somebody I forget who it was. It might have been Peter Baugh, but it was the three of us with Will, and Colin asked him a question, and Will was like actively fighting back tears, like talking about how much it means to him to be a Ranger, and like how much like he's trying he's trying everything he possibly can. Like he was talking like a captain, and for all this, I'm not giving Trocheck the captaincy. If you put if you make me give out the C to somebody that's currently on this team, easily, it's Will Cooley.
I don't think there's a captain on this team, and I think that's part of the issue. I mean, I know that I will read at some point in the next 2 weeks, how do you fix the Rangers? And someone will say, well, you just throw a max at Gavrikov the first day of free agency to play him with Adam Fox, and that'll fix everything. And is Gavrikov good at defense? Yes, of course, but he's 29 years old and doesn't contribute offensively in the slightest bit. I do think there is a path to improving this team. But before we wrap up and pivot towards looking the playoffs, the offseason, etc., it's hard to fathom how it spiraled this badly. I think the fourth team ever to win the President's Trophy and then miss the playoffs the following season. You had the Senators, Blue Jackets, Red Wings, Canadians give you a million chances to get back in this race. The fact you were even in this race after having a 5-15 stretch is a stinging indictment of the Eastern Conference at large. All you needed to do was win like 3 more games at any point over the course of the entire season. Maybe win 3 games in a row at some point. And instead, all we heard was, well, we just need to try harder. Our effort is going to get there. And we heard that for 4 months. It's like being in the relationship with somebody who keeps saying, no, I'll get it together. And before you know it, you're 35 and you're married and you have a kid and they still haven't gotten their shit together. That's what this team is this year. They're the person who keeps saying, no, we're going to get it together. I promise. And then they don't do anything to change it. No one got healthy scratched except for Capo Caco and Zach Jones. Nobody got exiled except for players who were actively bad. And you know what's crazy? They exiled two actively bad players in Barclay Goodrow and Jacob Trouba. Like, unarguably the 2 worst players on the team.
And then Ryan Lindgren after that.
And Ryan Lindgren.
Who, by the way, haven't
changed all that much.
Really bad in Colorado, too.
Yeah.
Ryan Lindgren's been so bad at Colorado. But because he's sheltered, a lot of fans are really high on Ryan Lindgren for some reason, but like his metrics in Colorado and one of the best teams in the league are just as bad. Like that's not good. As a tangent.
I mean, Lindgren's 9-11 goals for and against, 16-12 expected goals for and against. Pretty mediocre to bad, but playing in a smaller role, so it's not as egregious.
Right.
And you sit here, and what were the big inflection points, talking points of this season? Well, they just got to fight harder. And we got to play Matt Rempe every game because he drags them into the fight. I'm glad we've dispelled that notion as well, that if Rempe's in the lineup, they play better, because they don't. It's great the Rangers draw more penalties in games he plays in. It doesn't matter if they have a bottom 5 power play. I think so much of these issues largely stem from what I was saying before, the idea of the predetermined outcomes. Like, they think JT Miller is good at defense because he occasionally hits people. And that's why he's killing penalties, even though he's never really killed penalties before in his career. They like his attitude and who he is as a person more than they like his hockey, because if they knew anything about his hockey, they wouldn't be playing him as a penalty killer. Because at a certain point, the diminishing returns happen. It's the same thing with Trocheck, who has, thank God this season is over, because we can finally stop having people reply, well, he was good in the playoffs last year. That's great. That was last year. It's great. He was good one time in the playoffs, once in the 7 years of that contract that he's going to sign. That's going to
the minute people stop talking about what players have done in the past versus what they could do for you now, it is when we reach hockey utopia.
Yes.
I'm so sick and tired of, like the whole discourse a couple years ago when they were trading for Patrick Kane. Like, oh yeah, he was a good player.
Yes, when Obama was president.
But that you're not going to get a time machine.
No.
The whole point is, if you're making a trade, is for what the player can do for you right now and in the future. I don't care about what they did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, even last year. If they are actively really bad now, why should I care about what they did before when I can see them playing right now and they are bad? Why? That doesn't matter to me. It shouldn't matter to you. It shouldn't matter to anybody. If you are genuinely that good of a player, then not only should you continue to have good outputs year in and year out, but you shouldn't, like, why are you trading for a guy with one hip and you're talking about how good they were in yesteryear? That's not going to help you now. So why? What's the point?
And that speaks to, again, the hubris that the organization has, that they're always right. I mean, this is a team that traded a point per game player for somebody who is out of the NHL. Sammy Blais is not in the NHL anymore 3 years after that, 4 years after that trade. And they knew better. The Rangers knew better. The guy who played 11 minutes a game on the fourth line on a team that had won the Stanley Cup 3 years before as the 11th forward, that was more important than a forward who could meaningfully produce points because he wasn't North American, because he didn't hit people through the wall. All of that stuff is great. But again, if you're not good, it doesn't matter if you hit people. It doesn't matter if you fight, if you're not actually good. Can that help you? Sure. A fight can liven things up. A fight would have been nice at some point in the last month, if we're going to be honest. But nobody has shown any meaningful determination. No one has shown a willingness to get out of the fire. And that's the thing that was really eye-opening this year. Because a lot of guys on this team, and look, there's certain guys, Cooley, Shesterkin to some extent, Fox to some extent, I'm willing to give a semblance of a pass to for the circumstances around them being so egregiously bad that they underperformed. But you look at the rest of this team, how am I supposed to take Zibanejad, Trocheck, Kreider seriously going forward?
You can't.
And that's the problem, because you have seen the Emperor with no clothes now. You know that this is all extremely fragile and tenuous. And the first time they lose 3 games in a row next year, we're all going to be looking around shell-shocked. Oh, they're about to lose 5 of the next 8 because nobody here has the conviction or the gumption to grab this by the reins and try and get a handle on it. And that's how you end up with the stupid decisions, where it'll be Sam Bennett, it'll be Brad Marchand, it'll be Gavrikov. It'll be something that on the surface makes sense. But when you actually, hold up a magnifying glass to it and think about it, well, this is stupid. This isn't going to make Trocheck back check better. This isn't going to make Kreider pass the puck to somebody open. This isn't going to fix Zibanejad. And it's the same problems we're going to keep having over and over again. These guys, and we said this last year, after they lost to Florida, hell, we said it 2 years ago after they lost to the Devils. You bring in whatever coach you want in here. You're not getting 33-year-old Artemi Panarin or Trocheck or Kreider or Zibanejad to change who they are as hockey players. That's not how sports work. You are always just going to change the coach and hope the structural changes get better results, because you're not getting guys who are 10, 15 years into an NHL career to change how they play hockey. You're not. Go back and watch the episode we recorded the first day of free agency 2 years ago where I was in my friend's backyard. Go watch it and listen to me and Andrew say, yeah, it's great. Laviolette's not Gallant. He's not going to get Trocheck or Zibanejad or Kreider or Panarin to meaningfully play differently. Yeah, they had a great year last year. That's great. They didn't win anything, unfortunately.
No, they won a bunch of games during the season, and they just got they lost to a better Panthers team. But you mentioned this a few minutes ago. If you lost to a team that you have deemed to be better than yours, why then did you not make tangible changes to address that? Yeah, Riley Smith was fine. He was, he was an okay addition, sure, and no one's arguing that. But the underlying issues this year were still happening last year. We've talked about this multiple times. The defensive issues were still there. It was, the 5-on-5 issues were still there. They were masked by incredible goaltending and incredible special teams play. And now that the Shesterkin isn't stealing every game for you, and the power play is as ice cold as you could possibly get it. Now all of the other issues that were already here are exacerbated to an exponential degree. You did not fix the problems that caused you to lose the series against Florida. And now, therefore, it has snowballed into, the things that used to hold the Avalanche together now don't exist. And the snow is coming down, falling down, getting worse. And there's nothing you can do to stop it now because it's too late.
Nope.
You didn't fix the problem. You knew that this could happen at any moment. You could have prevented this, but you chose not to. And now here we are.
One thing, I was telling you this before we started recording, I did want to mention this on the show. So I saw a couple people on Reddit talking about this in terms of the Canucks, that the year over year, the goal differentials, the goal splits are egregiously different, where last year the Canucks rode a PDO heater and all their players had great years. Besser had 40 goals, first time in his career he ever hit 30, let alone 40. And I wanted to apply that to the Rangers. And in terms of all situations, so even strength and special teams, year over year, Zibanejad minus, where is it, 74? Yeah, Zibanejad was on the ice for 74 fewer goals this year than last year. Kreider on the ice for 65 fewer goals this year than last year. Trocheck, 60 fewer. Panarin, 54 fewer. Adam Fox, 48 fewer. When you're talking about at least 50 goals across, because obviously some of those are overlapping with each other, those goal contributions year over year, but we're talking at least 50 to 60 goals fewer this year versus last year for the team's best players. So it's great that we all like the bottom six pieces. We like Perreault, we like Othman, we like Berard, we like Edstrom, we like Carrick. It's great. We like all of those guys. The team's best players were not good enough this year. And what are you going to be able to do to coax better results out of guys in their early 30s to make this not a disaster again? Because, objectively, if you just want to think about it statistically, they won't be as bad next year because they can't be. These are all career lows. Like you said, Kreider has 5 assists all year. That's the lowest he's had in a season since he was only playing 35 games a year. But at the same time, how is it going to get better other than just hoping for positive regression? That's the big question.
I just don't see how there's tangible change in the roster, in the locker room, in the culture, if there isn't tangible change elsewhere first.
Yep.
And we'll know after the game against the Lightning, which I will be there for as a fan. But
you're a sick individual.
My dad texted me today. He's like, "Do you want to go?" I'm like, I mean, if you're offering, then yeah, sure, I'll go. So after work, I will be sprinting to MSG. I'll be a few minutes late, but I'll be there. But yeah, I mean, I was not planning on buying the tickets. My dad was like, ticket? And I said, okay, that's how that went. I'm there for the, I would just like to be in the building for that. But yeah, I mean, I just don't see how there's going to be real changes that aren't superficial without tangible changes being made across the board. I just can't see how one can happen without the other.
Friend of the show, Mark Messier, gave the worst slideshow presentation of all time on Saturday afternoon. Not a single thing about playing better hockey did he mention. Just 5 immaterial, non-tangible. Well, we got to identify leaders. We got to empower the young players.
Right.
How do we get better at hockey?
I was at the Yankees game. I couldn't be bothered. I'm sorry.
Oh, I only saw the clip on Twitter. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't watching the fight. I'm not stupid. I
Yeah.
wasn't wasting my Saturday afternoon watching the Rangers. Come on now. I have self-respect. I was watching golf. Yeah, no.
I learned some things about the Masters at work. I was I had some people teach me about it, that the circles are good and the squares are bad. See, I'm
Yes.
learning.
Yes.
I'm learning things about other sports,
Hey,
as
well,
opposed to listening to what Mark Messier has to say.
again, when we start talking about making the team better as opposed to the vibes and the feelings, then we can talk. Okay. If we want to materially improve the team and then say, hey, we need leadership, hey, we need to be grittier, okay, we can have that conversation then. But right now, this team stinks.
It's bad.
Objectively, they stink. They're going to be in the lottery. They are going to be one of the 13 teams in the lottery if they don't give the pick to Pittsburgh, which I think they should,
They
by the
should.
way.
They probably will.
But again, where are the solutions? Because this general manager has shown very limited problem solving ability. And I think that'll do it for this week's show. If Laviolette gets fired between now and next Monday, we'll do a show. If not, we'll see you guys then. Until then,